Welcome to Grit, the Real Estate Growth Mindset podcast, hosted by Brian Charlesworth, founder of Sisu. Sisu provides growth automation software for real estate. You'll hear stories from real estate thought and technology leaders, team owners, and brokers on how they grew their business in a rapidly changing industry. You'll learn how to transform your brokerage and teams into a high-performing and analytics-driven business so you have a new, durable, competitive advantage against disruption in your market. So let's get right into it.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Grit podcast. Super excited today to have Joe Herrera on with me. I just met Joe about a month ago, and super excited to have him on with me today. So Joe's background, I know he has done a lot of things that I want to dive into today, from real estate to starting tech companies to being a master marketer. Some things that I think a lot of you guys are going to find entertaining. So anyway, thanks for joining us again. My name is Brian Charlesworth. I'm the founder of Sisu and your host of the show. And so welcome to the show today, Joe. How's everything going?
Awesome. It's great. It's the weather's great here in Vegas. We get about 9 months of the year that are awesome. The other 3 months are terrible, which is why I'm buying a house up in Utah so I can get out of the heat. But
you're buying a house in Utah? Well.
Yeah, Parowan.
Okay.
I just told my wife last summer, I was like, hey, I do this heat. So anyways, we found a house. We're going to spend some time up there in the summer and Airbnb it the rest of the time. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, good for you. I didn't know that. So Vegas, did you grow up in Vegas?
I did, yeah. So my dad came home from Vietnam, became a telephone installer for the Bell network. So Pac Bell became Nevada Bell. So I was born in Carson City. We moved down here in Vegas. So I'm a lifelong Nevada guy. Moved down to Vegas when I was about 6 years old, 6 or 7.
Okay.
So I've been in Vegas for the most part my whole life.
So you are the first person I've ever met, and I actually used to own a business in Vegas. You are the first person I've ever met that actually grew up in Vegas and stayed in Vegas. Everyone that's in Vegas is a transplant.
Right. It's becoming worse and worse too, as California raises their taxes. The infrastructure back east is terrible. People keep flocking to Utah, Nevada, places like this. But yeah, so actually my wife's born and raised here. I'm born and raised here. So it's, we love Vegas.
Cool. Well, I'm never going to be able to say again, but I
don't know anybody.
Somebody who grew up in Vegas and stayed in Vegas. So yeah, congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
So Joe, I'm excited to dig in with you today. I would love for you to share a little bit more about your background and just kind of maybe let's go back as far as how you got into real estate first.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can dig into your time as a tech entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of strange. I come from a long line of alcoholics and paycheck to paycheck living individuals. So on my mom's side, like a funny story, my grandpa was one of the early cartoonists for Disney. So they were at the opening day of Disneyland, 1955, July 17th. Wow. Never met him because he left when my mom was a little girl. My mom, moving to Nevada, she was a compulsive gambler. So obviously that's probably not where you expected this to start, but she left when I was like 10 years old. But growing up in Vegas, we have slot machines in every gas station and grocery store. And so when I was a kid, she used to tell me like, hey, I'm going to play the slot machines. We'd sit there for hours. And on the way home, she'd say, if you don't tell your dad, I won't make you do your homework, which is kind of super destructive. And, but the funny thing is that led to me getting terrible grades. So I graduated high school with like a 1.6 GPA. I barely graduated. And so after high school, I went on a 2-year mission for my church. Coming home, I think a changed person. I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to break those generational chains that kind of held me down and have led to kind of irresponsible living in the whole family dynamic. And so I knew that I didn't want to go to college. If I could get in at all, I didn't want to get in. And so my two options at the time were insurance and real estate, because I knew I was a good salesperson. So I figured I either would take little paychecks with big residual income that would come from insurance, or I would take big checks with no residual income that comes with real estate. So I ended up top producer here in Vegas, guy named Frank Napoli. I got my real estate license. I drove his limo while I was in real estate school. He had a limo that he used to show houses with, which was awesome. And then as soon as I got my license, I went out and knocked my first door. And I think the third door I knocked, I just said, "Hi, my name's Joe. I'm a realtor and I'm looking for people looking to sell their house." The guy was willing to sell. And so that was like kind of my entry into real estate. It all kind of came from a desire to have what my family never had and a willingness to do what my family's never done. And that's kind of been, why I got into real estate. I actually wanted to be a personal injury attorney, but I wasn't willing to pay the price to become one. Like I didn't want to go to school for 8 years to be one. So it was real estate or insurance were the two options for me.
That's interesting. I don't know exactly what the stats are. I heard about a year ago that I think it was around over 60% of realtors, and it might be higher than that, but it was over 60% of realtors didn't have a college degree. And so, you hear that stat, and it's so interesting to me because realtors used to be realtors, right? I think realtors now are business builders in many, many cases. And so there's a clear difference. So when you got into this industry, every realtor, how long have you been in the industry now?
20 years.
Okay. So like, as long as I can remember, and any team owner is going to tell you the same thing. If you ask someone coming into the business, how much do you want to make? They're always going to say 100 grand, right? They're always they're always focused on, I want to make 6 figures, right?
Right.
And now, you have people like yourself who, you've built this super real estate business you have how many agents now, Joe?
A little bit hard to reach that exact number. So locally, I think we have 120 agents, and then we have a team in Utah and Arizona. And then we receive compensation from almost 400 agents. So we've built kind of like this
your team
situation where, we've got 400 agents we work with.
So you have 400 agents you work with and approximately 120 of those on your team?
Yeah. So we have 20 core team members that are every day in the office full time. And we have about 50 agents that we provide leads and technology for that are on splits with us. Then we have another, 300 agents that we mentor and coach and receive a little bit of compensation that way.
Okay. So you guys, anyway, it's fascinating to me how people like yourself, you want change, you want to prove, you want to break that chain that's been in your family lines. And you go from, I'm going to sell some real estate to I'm going to build this massive business with 400 agents that are tied to me. And, I don't have any idea how much money you make, but I do know that most people in your situation are making upwards of $1 million a year, which is more than you would have been making as a, an attorney, right?
Right. So the challenge with our industry is the outside perspective is I can work very little and make a lot. And so people enter the industry that way. So it is interesting that to my friends who are doctors and lawyers, because I'm a marketing guy, I do a lot of social media marketing. They think I play on Facebook all day. And, I'm a realtor who just plays on Facebook. But the reality is I make a lot more money than a lot of them do. And I didn't have to go to school for 12 years. But I think it's an insecurity real estate agents have as well, because you can create, but at the same time, when you look at the business practices of realtors, which I know is your whole thing, is how do you create productivity through metrics and tracking and things like that? There's an insecurity that lies at the heart of a realtor of saying, I didn't pay the price that my doctor and lawyer friends did, so I'm not going to run a business the way they run it. I'm going to run around and be part Chip and Joanna Gaines and part accountant and part transaction manager and part handyman to try to almost prove to ourselves that we are something. So building a business out of real estate has been a super fun endeavor, but it's just not, unfortunately, it's not the way a lot of realtors approach their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of how Sisu was born, right? To streamline and automate the business and to help realtors who are salespeople to become great leaders. But So Joe, you got into real estate, and then how did you get into marketing? Like marketing has been a big part of your real estate career, but how did that happen? Because that's very uncommon.
Yeah. So back in 2007, at the beginning of the crash, Taylor and I, my business partner, we went down to Palm Springs and heard a guy by the name of, what's his name? A guy out of Canada his whole marketing was super unique. So if you've seen the billboards that are like, we'll sell your home in 10 days or we'll buy it ourselves. Craig Proctor. So we went to a Craig Proctor seminar, and it was all this advanced marketing. At the time, the internet wasn't really much of anything, but he was, billboards and postcards that would say, if your home doesn't sell in 10 days, I'll buy it cash or whatever it was. And so then we started messing around with Craigslist, running similar type of ads, and got similar type of results. At around that time, though, we sold a real estate brokerage, and I just became super burnt out in the real estate industry. And that's when I went into dove into the tech industry. Spent 2 years not actively doing anything in real estate. When the tech experiment failed, came back into real estate in 2014 full time. It kind of blended those two things together, like unique marketing concepts that real estate agents can do. The thing that I learned from Craig is he did what everyone else could do, but he just talked about it in a way no one else was willing to talk about it. And so I blended that with social media and technology. And so in 2014, we started executing on Facebook and Instagram. Well, Facebook first, eventually Instagram. And this year, we'll close 300 transactions because of Facebook. We have 50 deals in escrow right now that are leads we generated on Facebook. And so it's become kind of the bread and butter, the bedrock of our business, but it almost came out of failure. Like failing at our tech company led to us leveraging technology marketing to fuel our whole business.
Okay. So that's very unique. And I think, because it's so unique, it allows someone like Zillow or someone like Realtor.com or Redfin or, the list goes on and on.
Right.
Companies to come in and create marketing companies to generate leads, because there are so few of you doing that actually in the real estate space. So I want to back up just a little bit, though. You talked about selling a brokerage and you just blew right over that. So you went from Craig Proctor, which, by the way, Craig is still around. He sends us tons of customers.
Yeah.
And
he's awesome.
We love Craig Proctor and his network. But so you did that, and then you grew this company, this brokerage. Was that an independent brokerage?
So what happened was in 2010, our RE/MAX, which was the largest RE/MAX in Nevada, they killed it. We got called down to City Center, and there was people spitting fire and midget kiss and all this stuff. Like, I'm not kidding. Like 500 agents showed up to a ballroom at City Center, and they said, "Congratulations, you're no longer RE/MAX agents. You now belong to Better Homes and Gardens." And we're like, okay, that's not the worst thing. They're like, there's a 6% franchise fee. RE/MAX agents at their core are super independent, pay per transaction type thing. So we walked out of that meeting with midget kiss and fire spitting and everything. And we're just like, what do we want to do? So there was a partner of ours, or a guy that we knew pretty well, that said, hey, let's just open our own brokerage. So it forced us, because we didn't want to be Better Homes and Gardens guy with the 7% override on all of our business, to open our little indie brokerage. So we opened a brokerage here in Las Vegas called Simply Vegas. It was an indie brokerage. By the time Taylor and I sold in 2012, I think we had built it up to 150 or 175 agents. So we sold that brokerage back to our partner. That was our first kind of brokerage exit at that point.
So are you, I don't know if you're willing to talk about this, but I think there are a lot of people that build brokerages into indie brokerages with the intention of selling those. And maybe not quite as much as there used to be, but I'd love if you would be willing to dive into like, what kind of multiples do you get on a brokerage like that? I think that's extremely valuable for people who are possibly heading down that road, right? I mean, is that the best thing you could have done, or is there better? So love to hear some detail behind that.
Yeah, it's hard, because if you follow the poet Rascal Flatts, they said, God bless the broken road that led us to where we are. So I'm so happy and excited about my world right now that it's hard to look back and say anything was wrong, because it just all led to this amazing world that I live in now. The fact is... Okay,
so maybe I could ask you in another way. So when most people sell a business, they sell a business so they can retire.
Sure.
Now, not me. Like, I think that's changed a lot too. A lot of people say, I want to retire. Well, maybe it's, I want to be independently wealthy. In my opinion, if somebody retires and as soon as they sit on the couch and that's how they spend their days, their life's over. Right. So keep growing no matter what you do. But I guess the question is, did that put you in a position to where you were independently wealthy and didn't have to work again?
No, it didn't.
Okay.
So yeah, at the time, owning a brokerage was the only option. Like that was, we either would work for someone and pay them a split or transaction fees, or people would work for us and pay us a split or transaction fees. So at the time in 2010, that was our best option. We made a couple of $100,000 or something. Like it wasn't life changing. It wasn't like, I think we went out to dinner. We might have gone on a trip or something, but there wasn't any like massive, wasn't like, oh, our world has changed now. Because the fact of the matter is brokerages don't make that much money. And brokerages like ours that were dependent on us to run it and or be the face of it lose their value involved. And so like if someone hit me up right now and said, hey, Joe, I want to start an indie brokerage, my response to them would be, there's just such a better way to do things. But at the time, the options that were laid before us, Realty One Group had just launched in Vegas not long before that. Cuba was killing it. So we were like, hey, what if we start a Realty One Group spinoff, but maybe with a little bit nicer office, right? Everything's a small, like rip off and duplicate R&D off of the previous model. And so it's like, well, what if we create Realty One Group, but with a classier image or whatever? And it worked to the tune of a couple $100,000 or whatever. We made some money, but it wasn't like game over time. Like, man, do I want to work? Still had to work. Yeah. There was no option for us at the time. But like looking what it led us into starting a tech company. The tech company had nothing to do with real estate. It was an event-based algorithm where I could say, I'm going to be in Salt Lake, December 14th through the 18th. Show me all the events that are happening, cultural, concerts, sporting events. And we partnered with Shaquille O'Neal and we were publishing events for Neff and Skull Candy and all these awesome companies. And it failed. We ultimately couldn't get user adoption, but it was almost like selling the brokerage. Let us try that. Letting us try that led us back to real estate. And with that knowledge and experience we had into building our marketing engine that we use now to fuel our whole business.
Okay. So you came in and you're obviously an entrepreneur, right? You sold a brokerage. I don't care what amount it was. You built a brokerage,
right?
175 agents. You sold it. You then go and you start this tech company. How much money did you raise in your tech company?
$1 million. Raised $1 million.
Okay, so you raised $1 million.
And it was like friends, and it was the worst kind of money you can raise. It was like friends and family. Like it took to even talk about it now is crazy because I know you've been in this space before and you may have had some losers, but like that loss was the most painful like business thing I've ever went through. Like these were people that I loved and cared about. And at the end of it, we had nothing to show for it and no money. And it was like, sorry guys, it was the worst. But anyways, yeah. So we raised friends and family money.
Taking chunks of money from friends and family, hoping to make them millions, doing everything you can to just, I'm sure your world at that time was whatever it takes, working super long hours.
Right.
We're going to do whatever it takes to prove this out. And then all of a sudden, here you are 2 years later, and you're like, we're done. Like, how did you decide to end? That's always it's a hard one, right? Do you keep trying to figure it out and shifting it, or do you just say we're done? How did you guys come up with that decision?
So we ran it. So at the time, Instagram had just been acquired by Facebook, and all people cared about, there was no discussion of profitability. It was all about daily active users. That's all that people cared about at the time. So like we met with, so my next door neighbor growing up, believe it or not, was we lost touch for 4 or 5 years. And then he showed up and he Facebook friend requested me. And there were all these pictures of him and Jimmy Fallon and all this stuff. It turns out he started a company called dig.com and he ran a podcast called Dig Nation. He was one of the early investors in Twitter and Google Ventures and all this stuff, a guy named Kevin Rose. So we met with Kevin a bunch and he was like, hey, tech companies that don't come out of the Silicon Valley, they're just never going to make it. You've got a good idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. So we were going through this whole process and we got to a point to where it was like Shaq was our partner. Like we were texting every day and he was talking about us on Twitter and like he was doing everything he could to help us grow. And our just daily active user count never changed. Like we got 80,000 users, downloads, and then 1,200 people would show up every day to use the app. And so we couldn't raise institutional money because we didn't have enough daily active users. And we just didn't have we couldn't go back to friends and family again to raise more money. So we just kind of came to we could keep executing on this and trying, but we can't get the money we need institutionally. And we don't have the heart to go back and try to raise more friends and family money. So it was like, I don't remember exactly the day. It was 2014. We had, as a tech entrepreneur, you'll know you've got 90 days of roadmap, and then 60, and then 30. And it's like, all right, we can make one more payroll, and we could pay the AWS, the Amazon Web Services, like one more time to keep the app active. But it was like, we've got to get an infusion of money. And so we just hit a point to where like, all right, it's, we gave it a good try. So it was sad. I threw all the gear out of my house. I didn't want to see any shirts and hats. My kids loved wearing our swag. We threw it all away. Like anytime an old Facebook reminder post would come up, it was like a punch in the gut. So it was painful.
Yeah, I've experienced those. So I think most people, well, maybe not most people, but there's just a certain personality that is going to go through something like that and get back up. And, right. You guys were told by this guy in Silicon Valley that you need to be in San Francisco. You're never going to be able to do this. Do you know how many times I've been told that in my life? The great thing about this world is I no longer hear that. Those companies are all moving out of San Francisco today. Right. So that has shifted anyway. So you make that decision, and now it's like, hey, we're back in real estate. Real estate is what we know. And now we're going to take some of these things we've learned and apply them in real estate. Is that kind of how you made that next move?
If you've been enjoying Grit, please help us continue to grow the channel by leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with a friend. Now back to Grit.
Yeah, so it was Taylor kind of kept running the real estate company the whole time. And so it was like, hey, let's get back in, but let's do it different. And so he found the big thing was, let's use social media to blow up our real estate career, like blow up in a good way. Like, let's use social media to put us on steroids. And so he found a company out of Boston, a company called Curator, that was like social media for real estate agents. So we started messing around with that. We were running there. You'll remember back in the day, the automated, like, how much is my home worth ads on Facebook.
Yeah.
So we ran some of those, and then we remembered our Craig Proctor lessons, and we're like, well, what if we do it creatively? And so it was kind of like, I told Taylor, like, I've got to do this different. I can't get back into the just going out and showing houses and doing the same old thing anymore. And so we ran our first couple of test ads. I remember we took crappy pictures of an old house, put it on Facebook, and said, hey, great deal. Hit us up if you want any information. And people started hitting us up. And I think we generated like 20 leads that day. And I was like, hey, maybe there's something to this, And so just kind of caught on that way. We didn't understand at the time some of the psychology that goes behind social media. Like attractive people are the most clicked upon items on the internet. And then after that, it's probably attractive houses. And then after that, it's probably food. And so there was a lot of stuff we had going for us that we didn't realize. But running our tech company taught us the value of social media and what can be done. And so then moving into kind of the reboot, it was like, well, let's leverage what we learned to blow it up in real estate.
And what year was that?
14 is when the tech company shut down, and when we kind of got back all in on real estate.
Okay. So from 14 to 2021, I guess, you ran this independent brokerage. So for 7 years.
We stayed where we were. So we kept our licenses at our old brokerage until 2016. So in 2016, we realized it'll be cheaper to run our team out of our own office and cut our own paychecks. We were doing enough business and had enough agents, and it was like, rather than paying $500 a transaction to that guy, we'll just pay it to ourselves. So we opened Love Local Real Estate in 2016. Started with 10 agents, built it up to 140 agents by 2021.
Okay. So
same premise, like a nice office version of Realty One Group is basically what we were.
Okay. So, and Realty One has actually pretty nice offices. So you guys must have had really nice office. So yeah. Now you go 2021, all of a sudden you're saying, hey, we could make more money or we could do better. We could do things different. I don't know what your thought process was, but you go from running an independent brokerage to now you're a part of, recently made a move into real brokerage, right? So like how did you guys decide to get back involved with another brokerage rather than just sticking out with your independent brokerage?
So our number one pain point as brokerage owners was attrition. Like we can recruit. We knew we could. So we could bring on 80 to 100 agents a year, but statistically speaking, of those 80 agents we bring on, 25 of them are going to leave. So it's like this 2-step forward, 1 step back, 2-step forward, 1 step back. And the biggest pain point we had was we would bring an agent into our world and help them succeed. So in 6 months, they will have closed 8 or 10 transactions. And then they became like the number one target for every other indie brokerage in Vegas. They'd call them and say, hey, I know what your splits are. We can do a little bit better. Or, like, hey, if you come over here, we'll put you on a billboard or whatever stupid offering there was. But that became our biggest pain point was we bring on 80, 20 of them are going to leave. And of those 20 that leave, 10 or 15 will be the ones that we actually help be successful. And then the other 5 will be people who do nothing. So I hated that funnel of come in, and then our top producers are like bait for every other indie agent or indie brokerage at Vegas. So we were approached by another shop, a national brokerage that wanted to enter into Vegas. And they offered to buy 51% of our company for, a couple $1 million. So we'd net cash of $500,000 or whatever. And then we get paid out the rest over a period of time. And
you're not going to tell us who that was?
Nah.
I have a guess.
No,
but
we signed an NDA and I don't know when that expires, but yeah, we could talk about it offline. So anyways, they came in and said, we want to buy you guys for $2 million. We'll pay you, or 2.3 or something. We'll pay you 1.1. We'll pay you 40% of it now. And the other 60% is an earn out. You guys stay on as 49% shareholders. And then at that time, we took that offer to our mentor, a guy named Brett down in Phoenix. And he was like, well, if you guys are open to other ideas, have you heard about Real Broker? And so at the time, we had been approached by EXP years ago. And if I had a time machine, I'd probably go back and take that offer because I know a bunch of people that became millionaires. But so he kind of offered us a glimpse into what Real Broker was that solved all of our problems without us having to continue to grind at something that we were struggling at completing ourselves. So once I took the pill to realize there was a really good way for real estate agents, like it was almost like the Matrix, like once I took that pill, I came to the conclusion that the traditional brokerage model is a unilaterally beneficial system where, like, as a broker, I was making a little piece of everybody's business, but everybody was their own little island. And at the end of the year, I would hand them a 1099 and maybe like a hoodie to say, like, thanks for being awesome. But then there wasn't much else that I could offer them in the way of like helping them grow their business. So I could give them leads and I could do things like that. But it was always this trading commission packages for check stubs. And so we saw in Real an opportunity to partner with all of our agents. So we went to our 100 agents and said, hey, we want you to be our partners. So let's all become shareholders in the same company. So that happened. So June of this year, we made that transition from the indie brokerage into the Real Broker system.
Okay, June. So almost 6 months now. Has that had an impact? It sounds like the main reason you did that, and maybe I'm wrong, it just sounds like it from your story, main reason you did that was to reduce churn. Is that correct?
Yeah. Reducing churn was a big thing. So we had a full-time recruiter and we were always recruiting other agents from other offices. And so we'd say, and we had kind of started looking at Real, similar financial concepts as EXP. And so EXP is like, Vegas is scorched earth for EXP. Like it's been here for years and everybody's been approached about it. And so we turned to our recruiter and said, hey, so talk about our recruiting efforts. And I think she was like, we brought on 10 agents this month. And I'm like, oh, great job. Where are they from? KW. We could always get KW agents. Realty One Group. We could always get Realty One Group agents. Berkshire Hathaway, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, that's cool. Well, who can't we recruit? And she said, I can't get a single EXP agent to even take my phone call. And I was like, why? And she said, they keep telling me they have ownership. I don't even know what it means, but they own their company or they're getting revenue share or whatever. And I turned to Taylor and we were like, bro, there's our answer. Like, we need to get in a world to where if we help someone succeed, they stay with us longer and become our partners for life, as opposed to helping them succeed. And then they become like attraction bait for every other brokerage in Vegas. So coming on board Real, in June 15th, we launched with 90 agents here in Las Vegas, and we're currently up to just shy of 400 in our network. So it's been 5x growth almost in that time. And I think by February, we'll probably end up with about 1,000 agents that we work with. Mentorship, coaching, lead generation. I love the expansion aspect of it. So it's changed our world that in Vegas, we had this brick and mortar office that we were restricted to. And since coming over, we opened a team up in Utah. So we've got 5 agents up there that we do lead. Because again, going back to my core as a lead generator. So we generate leads for that group up in Utah. We have another team down in Arizona we do the same thing for. So it's just, for me, it's a dream world because there are no boundaries to my growth anymore.
Mm-hmm. So you're now national. You've gone from being a local Vegas, call it brokerage, to being a national real estate company, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was just on the phone with someone from Canada, and we're launching in Oklahoma, and it's just so fun because of my unique skill set of lead generation. I generate Realtor.com Zillow quality leads for 1/20th of the cost. It requires me, so I'm still kind of geeking out, playing on Facebook like my doctor and lawyer friends say I do. It's true, but it allows me to generate leads in any marketplace, plug and play. And so now it's just, who's the right person for us in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Who's the right person in Buffalo, New York? And then we just get that team leader there. We start building around them. And it's kind of, we'll take care of all the leads in the back end. You just go get us agents. And it's this perfect marriage of letting them, because better than anybody, Brian, like, it's impossible for one human being to be a great lead generator, a great lead converter, a great transaction organizer, like an agent that puts a deal together, and a great transaction facilitator on the transaction management side. Most real estate agents try to be all 4 things: the rainmaker, the filtration system, and the distribution system. It's nuts. So we just very much compartmentalize our business. And I go, okay, I am the rainmaker. And then we have our transaction management team and what we expect from an agent. And so, like, as you can tell, I get really excited about this because I can just plug and play in any market. And a national company like Real allows me to expand. I don't have to get my license in Arizona or Utah or Oklahoma. I can just find that team leader, blow up their business, and off to the races.
So thanks for sharing that. We're getting short on time, Joe. So I have a couple other questions for you. But like, what are some of the other key things you've done to your business this year, other than changing from an indie brokerage over to a real brokerage? What are some other key things that you've done that have like made a difference in your business? I'm guessing there's other things that attribute to your growth, but maybe not.
So this morning I was on a training. This is going to sound like scripted. I promise you it's not, but you shared something on Instagram last night about that your production will double 107%, I think, team growth if you track your numbers, if you actually keep track of what you're doing. And one thing you've helped me understand is that for the last 20 years, I've led my team based on emotions. So it's like, so-and-so seems happy. They're here on time. They're smiling. They're fun in our team meetings. Like, that's how we've ran our team. Taylor is much more analytical. So he's helped us get he's the one that found Sisu. He's helped us get analytical. But now I'm able to lead and guide based on statistics and numbers and effort. And like, it's just changed the way we look at our team. It allowed us to run the analytics to realize that to hit our core team production goal next year, we have to double the size of the team. In the past, it'd be like, well, how would everyone feel about this? And how does it affect morale and all these things, which are still important. But numerically speaking, if I want to produce X, I have to walk it back and start with A, which is the number of contacts we make have to improve. Well, if we improve the number of contacts, there are limits to human ability to reach contacts. So let's just double the number of people trying to get contacts, trying to set appointments. As you taught me, like, the peak of the mountain is appointments met. How do we get more appointments met? Well, we have more people doing the other activities. So that's been a big change in our business, is to focus on the production activities and no longer lead a team based on emotion, but on numbers. We've opened a title company. We're working on mortgage. So like we're really focused on, if we have this one instance, which is the closing of a residential or commercial real estate transaction, how many different ways can we monetize that same transaction? So rather than just saying we get buyer commission and a split, what if we say we get revenue share when anyone in our network sells a home? That's another deal. What if we say we get stock when we hit production goals? That's another one. What if we get a piece of title? What if we get a piece of mortgage? What if we offer them insurance? So we're really working on that ancillary piece to say, if we can direct 1,000 transactions in our world, how can we turn that into 5,000 pay points by monetizing that transaction in 5 different ways? So
yeah,
those are all things we're focused on this year.
Those are great things to be focused on. And it obviously, it makes me happy to hear that you guys are leading by numbers and results. And
we are now. It's been emotion until this point.
The fun thing about that is I see it over and over and over again. People will actually be attracted to your business because they know you're running your business that way. Yeah. Like that alone is an attractor. But then offering all of these ancillaries, I see more and more team owners today focused on the ancillaries because you guys are the first ones in with the client,
right?
And you kind of dictate where they go. So why give that business away to everybody else? And you now have the mortgage companies. Rocket Mortgage is coming into real estate, right? And so it's these boundaries of these different industries are all blending together right now. So it's going to be
well. And to your point, it always starts with that core. Like if you look at a human relationship, intimacy is really the driving factor. It's like everything else is spawned from the desire for human connection and intimacy. Well, in real estate, everybody wants to buy a house. Nobody, like lenders are always like, we'll send you leads. Nobody goes, hey, can I get a loan? And then let me go find a house. Every single buyer in the world says, let me find a house. And then I'll figure everything else out from there. So like accidentally, we ended up at the top of the totem pole because everybody starts with, let me go see a house. And so now building those ancillary services becomes relatively easy. I would hate to be building from the, mortgage company side or insurance side and saying like, hey, let's create some real estate transactions. The realtor is the top of the totem pole that can make that happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Last question I have for you, like, I know you're a family man. What do you and your family like to do when you're not selling real estate? And my guess is, because I know you're having fun now selling real estate, you just shared that with us, you're probably working more than you have in the past.
Right.
So how do you balance that with family life, and what is it you like to do? What are some things you and your family like to do?
Well, great question. I think you could probably agree. I tell my team and my family all the time, like I'm more successful now than I've ever been, but I've never been so motivated. And I'm literally, that's just a gratitude statement, because I always wondered, like, if I get to a point to where I don't necessarily have to work for a while, would I stop? Because I come from that background of paycheck to paycheck. And so my paycheck to paycheck date is years in the future before I have to worry about that. So my family, we go to church every Sunday. We play a lot of golf. I put a golf simulator in our house. So me and my boys, I'm obsessed with time. And I've got a 17-year-old son that this summer he'll be heading out on a mission. And so he'll be gone for 2 years. So I bought a golf membership and I put a golf simulator in, and it's where we connect. I figured out a long time ago that it's much easier for me to find out what he's interested in and come to his level than try to force him to be interested in what I'm interested in. So it started with Fortnite. Like 4 years ago, me and my son were playing Fortnite together. And then he came to me one day and said, Dad, I want to play golf again. And I was like, let's go get a membership. And now I spend 2 to 3 afternoons a week with my 17-year-old son playing golf. I spend 4 or 5 nights a week with my 9-year-old son on our simulator at home. We play par 3 courses and he's getting pretty good. We're buying that place up in Utah, which will be a family retreat for us to get away, because I know you've got kids that have kind of grown up, and I'm just really obsessed with this principle that my most valuable possession is not car or a house or a real estate company, it is time. And I just have a little bit of it with my 4 kids. My 17-year-old's going out next year. I've got a 15-year-old that's got 2 more years, a 12-year-old that's got 4 more years, or five more years. And so it's like, I'm just obsessed with that principle that if I don't manage my time carefully with my family, while I'm super excited and motivated with my business, if I don't manage my time, I'll look back with a whole bunch more success and realize that I wasted all my time. So I now use my money to purchase time as opposed to my time to purchase money. So it's volleyball trips and golf, games of golf. We just went on a Disney cruise. So I use my money to buy time with my kids as opposed to focusing on using my time to create more money.
Yeah, that's such great advice, Joe. I think we'll end on that. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. To all of our followers and listeners, please, if you haven't, go out, give us a recommendation, give us a rating. That helps us bring people like Joe on the show. And so, Joe, you really gave a different aspect. You have a totally different story than I've heard from anybody else in this business. So really appreciate you sharing that story with us today and including the hard times, right? Including those losses. I think those are what make us stronger. And congratulations on getting back up and winning that fight.
Thanks, buddy. All
right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast. If you have an interest in a free 7-day trial of Sisu, go to sisu.co, sisu.co. Make sure that you use the coupon code GRIT, that's GRIT, to waive all your setup fees and receive a 10% discount on your subscription. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to subscribe, search GRIT, the Real Estate Growth Mindset, on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Take care.